Development Agency. May we have a roll call?
Agency members: Friedman.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chair Manukian.
Here, and your report, please.
The agenda for September 27, 2011 regular meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, September 22nd, 2011 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Next is minutes for the meeting for September 13, 2011.
I'll move the minutes.
For a second.
Second.
Minutes will be approved as submitted. Next is oral communication. I don't have any cards. Do you have any cards, Mr. City Clerk?
No, there were not.
What is on the business agenda?
6A is Director of Community Development regarding review of project objectives and update of financial impacts of the Americana brand. Report only.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Redevelopment Agency, Philip Lanzafame, Chief Assistant Director of Community Development. Last year, there was a request to bring forward to the agency some kind of report on the economic impact of the Americana brand. We provided that for the agency, and during the discussion, it was suggested that it might be a good idea to do that on an annual basis. We are 1 year later, and so we've scheduled the report for you that you have in your packets. Quickly running through those, we believe that any time you look at the impact from a redevelopment standpoint, you're not just looking at a financial return. There are public policy goals and objectives to be achieved with every redevelopment project. There are direct financial impacts, and then there are indirect impacts. We believe, as we've reported in the past and would continue to report, that the Americana brand has achieved the public policy goals, that of creating a gathering place to generate revenue for the general fund in general city services, and to provide a range of retail opportunities for our residents and our visitors. From a direct financial impact report, we looked at several areas when we first approved the project, first being sales tax. In 2004, when we approved this project, we projected in year 3 after operation $1.37 million to the city in sales tax. We have achieved in year 3 $1,165,000. That is about just under 20% under our estimate at this time. It does not take into account any adjustment. The project opened in May of 2008, right at the very beginning of our most recent session. The second category that we looked at was property tax. Again, in 2004, we projected in year 4, which would be fiscal year 11-12, an assessed value of $223 million for the property, which translates into just over $1.7 million in property tax increment to the redevelopment agency. In fact, the project was assessed at $479 million for this fiscal year. That translates to about $3.6 million in tax increment, which is something in the neighborhood of 113% more than was estimated. We had a category for maintenance. You may be aware, Caruso Affiliated is responsible for maintaining the public open space that is open to the public and is owned by the City of Glendale. They're responsible to program and maintain that. Our initial estimate was that it would cost approximately $360,000 to maintain a 3-acre open space. In fact, this last year, Caruso Affiliated has spent approximately $575,000 on landscape and the fountain and maintaining those. So we believe that we have achieved a financial positive on that. That is something that our Parks Department and our city, our general fund, does not have to maintain. We also had a term with respect to parking revenue. Should the Americana brand choose to charge for parking, we would split with them net revenue after all expenses. In this last year, the project achieved $191,000 of revenue. The City Redevelopment Agency received a check for over $95,000 in this last year. Again, a positive for us on the financial side. Finally, we have a term in the agreement that if certain hurdles are met, financial returns for the developer, then we would start splitting revenue received on the project. We anticipated that we would not hit those hurdles, that we probably wouldn't ever get to them, and to date, the project has not achieved.
What do you mean would never get to them?
We believe that the developer would be entitled to an 8.5% return on the housing, 11 3/4 on the retail, based on cost. They have not achieved those returns. So there's no participation.
Never say never.
Well, never say never. That's why I say to date we have not.
Okay.
11 what on the commercial?
11 3/4. Finally, we talked about when we approved the project, indirect or spin-off benefits, what development or what private investment comes here because of the Americana. That is very, very subjective. So we really didn't quantify that. What I can tell you from anecdotally, what I can tell you is we have something in the neighborhood of 500 or 600 apartment units and condominiums that are being proposed in our downtown. Many of the developers have said they're riding on the heels of the success of the Americana brand. There is some investment, private investment, that's looking across the street on Colorado. Again, we believe that it's because of the Americana. We heard from as far north as McGuire Properties on the other side of the freeway that they built their building largely because of the amenity in Glendale that is the Americana brand. We don't have any factual evidence, though, to base that on, so we merely pass along those anecdotal references. That concludes our economic impact report. We will do this again this time next year, should the agency desire. We'd like to have the enrollment from the assessed value in place so we can give you some actual numbers.
If I go ahead.
I'm still not clear on the maintenance aspect. The projection was for 360. In fact, now it's 577, so it's a lot higher. When you look at the public space, what I would consider public space, that's basically the green and the fountain and so forth. But I know that legally and contractually, public space also includes the sort of commercial areas as you come in from Brand, as you come in from Central and so forth. So I guess my question is, how does that work? I mean, those commercial, there's commercial on both sides with ongoing tenants and so forth. How does that work? I mean, how do we, who's getting the benefit there? I mean, obviously the tenants of the Americana are getting the benefit there as opposed to just the park and the fountain.
This was something that, to be quite honest with you, some of the public asked, gee, is that really a benefit? The idea behind it is a piece of information, an additional piece of information. The way we looked at it in the auditor's report, we said if we had 3 acres of open space, what would it cost the city to maintain? And Parks gave us an estimate of $120,000 an acre for some passive park. So that was the number, times 3 is 360. That's how we came up with the number that we wouldn't have to maintain that public open space. So we were looking at it as a benefit to us. In fact, what it's costing Crusoe affiliated is $577,000. Now, most of this is for that 3-acre space. Again, this is a piece of information. It's not an exchange of money. There is some benefit to the commercial users, much like there would be a benefit if they were on a public park. So
I guess what I'm asking, I mean, isn't there some way to break down, even though this commercial pedestrian area is, we own it, but isn't there...
It's a park.
Yeah, but I mean, there's kiosks there, of course, the trolleys running through there, you've got the commercial on both sides. Isn't there some way to break this down so that we wind up paying for the green area, if you want to call it that? and not this obvious private enterprise?
Mr. Quintero, neither the city nor the redevelopment agency pays for any of this. That is all Crusoe Affiliated's responsibility, both the commercial and the open space. What we're saying, this is why there was questions about this particular category or this element, is that is a public open space. It is owned by the public, but the public does not have to maintain it. Crusoe Affiliated does. What's the value of that? What's the value the public receives by somebody else maintaining it? We estimated that value would be $360,000. In our last year's report, Crusoe Affiliated spent $575,000 to maintain that.
Right,
So-
but the issue there for me is, on the other hand, when it gets to revenue participation, isn't he going to get to deduct this from his... So in effect, we're paying, I mean,
Being part of it, yeah.
yeah, we're paying part of it. Well, that's one question. The next question, how many spots in the, how many parking spots in the garage?
500 something? Oh, no, it's 2,700.
2,700 on site, 2,100 are commercial, and the balance are for the
Right,
units.
so 21 commercial. So how does the $95,000 that we get from this parking spot, how does that compare to other sort of city-run
We did not do that comparison. What I can tell you, the formula is that Crusoe Affiliated is allowed to deduct their costs. That's the ticket spitters and any maintenance they have on that. They're able to deduct that, and then whatever's left. In this case, last year, it was $190,000. So we split
Well, since
that.
this is supposed to be a public garage, I'd be interested in some report from transportation or whoever, how much we're making, sort of a comparison. The Orange Street garage, the other garages, what are we making from those city parking lots versus this particular one?
This was a term that came up quite late in the negotiation, and we were looking forward, if they should ever charge for parking, how are we going to treat that? And this was what was finally approved by the redevelopment agency and Crusoe Affiliated. So we'll look at that in comparison to our other garages.
As for me, in a prior life, having gone through the battles and the war for this development, it seems to me that the expectations back then, and the city manager can correct me if I'm wrong, were approximately $300,000 a month in revenue based on the projections back when we were initially talking about the Americana and all the campaigns, and that's my recollection. And that's about $3.5 million or $3.6 million a year, up to $4 million maybe. And based on the information that we have here today, it's a little bit over $5 million of revenues that the city's receiving at this point from that development in a down economy.
$5.5 million, yes.
So my expectations have been met and exceeded at this point in terms of not in terms of the public policy goals, but in terms of the financial revenue that we expected as a city from that development. So I'm glad that this data is public because there were a number of individuals who doubted whether this development would generate any revenue or anything that would be able to pay for itself. And at this point, it's doing much more than that. So I'm glad that this report is here, and I think we should continue with this report on a periodic basis.
As you point out, Mr. Chair, I think as the economy recovers, we'll see that number on sales tax get far past what we were estimating. We're at 85% of what we originally estimated already in a down economy. And when you include the additions to the Americana for which we're not making any investment, like the new Nordstrom store and the Apple store, which we've yet to see the sales figures on that, but I suspect they're going to be through the roof, that will be additional resources that we had never counted on. So I think you will find in the next several years, the economy recovers. This will be a very bright spot in our economic future. You're to be commended.
I would hate to think where we would be if we had not invested in the Americana at this point with $5 million less in our coffers.
Well, and Mr. Lanzafame pointed out the non-economic benefits. All of you and all of us are down there quite a bit. There isn't a summer that goes by that I don't frankly marvel at the number of people that are down there enjoying the outdoors of the Americana. They don't have a lot of bags in their hands. They have their kids. They're out on the lawn. They're playing. They're having a good time. And I have marveled...
Especially the children's area.
Especially the children. I have marveled at the number of parents that are sitting around the pond, around the fountain, around the kids' play area. They're not there shopping. They're just there enjoying the environment with their kids. I suspect many live in the apartments that are around the area. It's a phenomenal way for people to get out of doors and just enjoy a great area. So I think the economic side aside, I don't know where you would go to have that kind of an experience for free in any urban setting.
And if the Apple Store, the largest in the state of California, comes out with iPhone 5, et cetera.
And iPad 3?
iPad 3, revenue's going up right there.
Well, at this point, this is a report only.
Report,
so
just
if there
receive
are
and
any
file.
comments or... Okay, let's move on to the next item at 6B.
6B is Director of Community Development regarding draft preliminary recognized obligation payment schedule, ROPS. B1 is resolution approving and adopting the ROPS pursuant to AB 1X26.
Good afternoon, Agency Chair Manukian and members of the agency. We are here to present the draft preliminary recognized obligation payment schedule. This schedule is required as part of the legislation that passed in June, and this document notes the financial obligations of the agency in 6-month intervals. This document is very similar to the EOPS, the Enforceable Obligation Schedule that you adopted in August. The primary difference being the EOPS covered the months of August through December 2011, and the ROPS covers January until June of 2012. One additional change is the ROPS also requires a source of payment to be documented. We are asking for you to approve this, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them, but very similar to the EOPS.
Who does this get submitted to?
This, similar to the EOPS, gets submitted to the State Department of Finance, State Controller's Office, and the LA County Auditor Controller.
All we need is your name for the record.
Elena Bobolian, Community Development.
Thank you.
So we pay about $500,000 a year to the school district, property taxing.
Those are our statutory pass-through payments, correct.
Any other questions?
No.
Motion.
I'll move to accept the receipt. Is this a receipt and file?
Second. Other questions? Roll call.
Agency members: Friedman.
Yes.
Najarian.
Yes.
Quintero.
Yes.
Weaver.
Aye.
Chairman Manukian.
Thank you. Next, any comments? Seeing no comments, there's a motion to adjourn.
We adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.
I'd like to welcome you all to the 18th annual Glendale Youth Alliance Luncheon. I am Rita Hajmanukian, former chair of the Glendale Youth Alliance. And before we really get started with today's program, the GYA staff and board have asked me to alert you of the dire situation that the GYA is currently in. We have lost all of our federal funding, and the summer program is in complete jeopardy. This annual luncheon is traditionally held in August to celebrate the accomplishments of our youth who have completed their job training. This year, the luncheon is early, and this year, the luncheon is a fundraiser to secure the possibility of having a summer youth program at all. At this moment, the GYA staff has secured 1,000 applications from youth looking for work. Last year, we had the privilege of honoring and serving 350 youth and literally changed their lives. It is unclear how many youth we will be able to serve this summer, but with your help, we are hoping to attain a goal of at least 100. Having said that, I'd like to